Hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. I just have a fun video today. I got tagged by Genre Books for the Nightclub Tag. This tag was created by Brian Bell 7. I actually need to watch a video from his channel because I'm not actually familiar with his channel. Maybe I'll watch his video on the Nightclub Tag. Just probably that'll be like a great place to start. So this one will be a fun tag because I've actually never been to a nightclub. I am a very boring person and just have always been a bit more of a, I don't know, kind of a stay-at-home kind of person. I'm much happier in a more relaxed environment. I get drained even before I developed a dysautonomia and got easily overstimulated. I've always been someone who just, I need alone time. Too much people is too much noise, too much socialization is just exhausting. I'm one of those people who I actually have to talk myself, even before, like I said, before I became homebound even, I was one of those people where I kind of have to like talk myself into leaving the house to go and socialize because I knew I would have fun once I got there, but it'd be like, ugh, can I just, I don't know, it'd be more fun to stay home. But when I get there, I'd have fun. It's just, but, so nightclub just never had any desire. But I think this will be a fun tag regardless. That being said, the first question, or the first prompt, it was a little bit hard for me to, not hard, but I had to think about it a little bit because I'm not a drinker either. So the first tag was cocktail hour. Name a book that you think pairs perfectly with your favorite drink. So like I said, I'm not a drinker. I am a bit of a control freak, which is why it's partially so funny that I have a medical condition that's so unpredictable, or several medical conditions that are so unpredictable. I have absolutely zero control from. Things can change from moment to moment. So, yeah, it's kind of amusing that I am actually kind of a control freak, and so God has a sense of humor. Sometimes his humor is absolutely terrible. But anyway, so I've never been much of a drinker because first of all, I don't like the taste of alcohol anyway. I've tried. I don't like it. And I'm a control freak, and I also have obsessive tendencies, which I noticed when I would drink Mountain Dew, when I was still able to handle that. So, yeah, I figured that if I had to mask the taste of alcohol in order to enjoy it, I would prefer to have a non-alcoholic version of that thing and then not have to monitor how much of it I would have and then be out of control because I got drunk. So that's always been my personal thing when it comes to alcohol for myself. I've just never, anyway. A few times I did have alcohol. It was a strawberry daiquiri, and then after a while I just would only order it virgin if I did have it. So after that long lead-in that really no one cared about, I ended up choosing for that Rose and Bloom. So somehow this is for my virgin strawberry daiquiri, which kind of is fun about this is if you are familiar with the book, there is actually an inner theme where it touches on a character who alcohol actually ends up being an issue within this book. But I was mostly thinking of Rose herself when I chose this book in regards to strawberry daiquiri because there's the sweetness without that bit of alcohol because she doesn't do any of that. I've read Eight Cousins as well. I actually read this one before Eight Cousins. I'm probably due for a reread of this. These are characters in my previous video I did on a book review of a DNF plus adding a new read, I talk about connecting to characters, almost like they are real people. And these are characters that I've had a long connection with, and every once in a while I just reread because I miss them and I want to visit some old friends. So this is my answer for number one, cocktail hour. This would pair nicely with a sweet drink, but without the consequences of alcohol. Then the next tag is neon lights. Name a book with a cover that immediately grabbed your attention, like the bright lights in a club. This one was a different kind of hard for me because usually the way I pick books is not based on the cover. Usually I pick books because I see something in footnotes that attract me, or I am pulled in because I already liked a specific author. So I don't usually get pulled in by covers. That being said, I believe that this one came up on an Amazon like suggested for you, and the cover did pull me in. This is a book by Barbara Berman and Ariane Fenatow, I believe that's pronounced, and this is called The Pocket, A Hidden History of Women's Lives. So I haven't read this yet, but I really found the cover to be very eye-catching, and I look forward to reading this. It just, isn't that a fun, oopsie, I knocked over my mug for a second, that would have been horrible. That's just a fun picture. So this looks like a fun book, and it was the cover that pulled me in initially. So that's neon lights for me. The next tag is The Bouncer. What book did you have to put down because it wasn't letting you in? Yes, I did pull it over. So that book, you're going to notice I have a mixture of fiction and nonfiction. But that book is Oliver Sacks's Migraine. I previously enjoyed his, what's it called? The Man Who's, The Man Who Thought His Wife's Head Was a Hat. I believe that's what the book was called. Really enjoyed that book. Now it is, fairly dense still because if you're familiar with Oliver Sacks, he was I believe I can't remember if he was a neurologist or a neurosurgeon. I came upon him after I developed my own neurological issues, and actually my migraine doctor is a huge fan of his and was rather delighted when I had already mentioned that I had started this book. Unfortunately, I have not been able to get as much out of it as I would like. Maybe I need to annotate it, but I have found just some of the stuff, particularly with all the different kinds of migraines, including abdominal migraines and all these different, what constitutes migraine if you can have all these other sorts of migraines. So this book, really, I was having trouble because it just has not been letting me in. I'm wondering if I need to annotate this and see if that helps me get more out of it. Because I've highlighted, but that's not enough. Now, to be fair, I was trying to read this. Let's see, this was either when I see my neurosurgeon before my first neurosurgery, or I think it was before my second, because I already knew I had migraines at that point. So, whereas for the first one, I didn't yet have a diagnosis of migraines. So, trying to read this when about to head in to actively see a neurosurgeon, that probably wasn't the best timing. So, that could have had something to do with it as well. It is an interesting cover, though. He has a lot of interesting topic matters. He has one called Musicophilia, which I've sort of read the beginning of, or read parts of it, and it looks very interesting, dealing with the brain and how it deals with music, and sometimes where there's been accidents where the brain all of a sudden becomes more in tune with music where it never was before because of an accident. I've actually known someone, I'm not sure if it comes in that book, but I've talked to someone online who she um had like taste was it tastes? Yeah, I think she tastes sound. So different sounds have different tastes. So when she would, or different colors, I think it was different colors. So she wouldn't like different sounds because of the color they would make. So like some sounds would have like an ugly brown, which must be very interesting when because she was a religious sister. So when she was in choir or whatever, that must have been very challenging for her. Um, and so certain people's names would have this color to it. So it wouldn't be just the sound that make her dislike the name. It would be the um, color it would make for her. And I'm going to be interested in seeing if I end up picking up Musicophilia at some point soon, if Oliver Sacks covers that. But he's been gone for a while, I think. So I'm sure that a lot of the things that he has covered, I'm sure science has progressed past what he has written. But he wrote quite a few books. Yeah, oh, yeah, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat was the one that I read. It's mentioned in the back of this book. But yeah, so that's one that that was a bouncer. Just wouldn't let me in. So number 4's tag, DJ's Choice. What book would you recommend for someone new to the fantasy genre? So I ended up picking 2, and part of that was influenced by genre books who he mentioned an Eddings book, which I do partially agree with his choice of David Eddings. Now, I think I ended up choosing a different series than he did. I ended up picking for Eddings The Diamond Throne, and that's the first book in the Elenium series, the Elenium trilogy. That was the first of the books that I read by David Eddings, which is actually a husband-wife team. But it's the Eddings style is one that is very approachable, very easy to read, and the characters are such that you don't feel like they're holding you at arm's length. That being said, I do have an issue with Eddings, and it's part of why I don't read any of Eddings' work anymore. Eddings basically has 3 characters, if that. 1 male character, 1 female character. And they all have the same tone. You read enough of Eddings' work, and you will see the blueprint of these 2 characters throughout. Sparhawk should not sound the same as Sparhawk, who is this, warrior who belongs to this religious order, should not have the same character voice of a young boy who grew up in the streets, essentially. And nor should they have the same tone of a character that is set in modern age. And I can't remember the name of that book. It had a sort of fantasy element to it as well, but it was just a book by itself. It's called Rachel? I don't remember. It's been a while since I've read it. But all of Eddings' characters through all of his books tend to reuse certain phrases, which would not be so bad if you were dealing with like a Terry Brooks, where you're dealing with families. And you might see that certain families tend to, pick up traits from each other. And maybe, these traits travel through family lines, certain phrases, etc. Okay, that might be something that makes sense. But for Eddings to basically have 1 male character type that sounds pretty much the same, and 1 female character type that sounds pretty much the same, I don't know, it's got to the point where as much as I think that the Elenium, and I think that David Eddings is, as an author, a good entry point into fantasy, after a while I think one can grow past Eddings, because Eddings isn't very good at differentiating character voice. That being said, I have mentioned that I am a bit of a snob when it comes to writing, or I am a bit nitpicky because I have done some editing, not any actual editing work, but I have been in writing groups where you pick things apart and offer constructive criticism, and that has affected how I read. And that's probably why the first read around with David Eddings, I didn't pick up on the fact that the writing style is not very creative when it comes to character voice. But it might also have been because I started reading Eddings, I think it was pre-college. So as time went on, when I would reread Eddings, I would notice the staleness, that all the characters sound the same, basically. Whereas when I read Terry Brooks, I noticed more depth to the characters than I had the first time I read. So, but like I said, that being said, Eddings and specifically the Elenium trilogy is probably a very good entry into fantasy. Now, one that I would suggest if you want to enter into fantasy where character voice is better done, I would recommend Wolf Hunt. Now, this also counts as a historical fiction. It's set in, well, they just say Crusade era, I believe, in the back of the book. But you're dealing with France and Brittany. Okay, sorry about that. I will edit out that point of me trying to find what I was looking for. But you're dealing with France and Brittany. So this book, besides having its fantasy elements, is one of the few historical fictions that I enjoy. And part of what I enjoy about it so much is actually the fantasy is secondary to it. The character development and the way the characters are drawn out, they have their individual voices, and absolutely love this. I probably started reading this around the same time that I started reading the Elenium. This has aged well for me in a way that unfortunately Eddings' work has not. This author apparently writes other historical fiction, but I have not read any of her other works. I believe it's her. I actually don't know if it's a male. Is Jillian a male's name or a female's name? I think it's a female's name. Doesn't actually have a picture of the author or anything. Her. Okay. So yes, I was right. So then Disco Ball is next prompt. Name a book that made you feel like you were part of a vibrant, glittering world. So I've mentioned this book before for different prompts, for a different book tag. This is Timothy Zahn's Night Train to Rigel. This is the first book in, I think it's a series of 4 or 5, and it's the Quadrail series. Zahn is masterful at building this world, this deep world that feels shiny and deep, and its glittering world is really vibrant. Glittering is just really the best way to describe this world. If you have not read the Quadrail series, I would highly recommend it. He actually does a brilliant job of handling a first-person writing style through a whole series of books, which I find to be quite amazing, because a lot of times when you're dealing with a series, it seems to me like you usually see a third-person narration versus a first-person. And I think he just does brilliantly in building this world just in general, but also considering the fact that he is using a first-person point of view. Highly recommend. My mom and I have described this as being like a noir, but in space. So sci-fi noir. So such a cool book, or such a cool series. 6, Dance Floor Diva. What book had you dancing with excitement from the first page to the last? Now, surprisingly, this is going to be a nonfiction. This is The Scarlet and the Black, the true story of Monsignor Hugh Flaherty, hero of the Vatican Underground. This book had me hanging on. I think I described it in my review of it as being like a thriller, but for real life. From each moment, you're like, I can't believe he tried something so daring. I can't believe he did this. I can't believe they did that. How did they have the nerves of steel to try to get away with that? And then the times when either the Nazis came so close to catching any one of them, or when they did catch up to certain people. I thought that the movie with Gregory Peck was exciting. When I saw it, the movie didn't even cover everything. It almost pales in comparison to the excitement in the book and the things that you don't hear about in the movie that Flaherty did. So yeah, this book I really found incredibly exciting throughout. So if you've not read it, I do recommend it. I think at one point this book was actually titled The Scarlet Pimpernel of the Vatican, which is also an awesome title. I think there is a different book on Monsignor Flaherty that now has that title. I think that when the movie came out that was based off of this book, that's when they changed the title. Then the next tag, guest list. Which author would you invite to a book theme party and why? So initially I thought J.R.R. Tolkien because he definitely has a love of just myth and all things to do with literature. Like you look at his love of Beowulf and Arthurian legend, all these different things. But the more I thought about it, I was like, well, he might be fun to talk to one-on-one, but he might be not necessarily the greatest in a party setting. So the person I ended up going with is someone who's actually a little bit more obscure. She only has a few books to her name. I can look forward to her putting out more, but her name is Molly Guptill Manning. I think I read her last year as well. She was another author whose book I just thoroughly enjoyed, and when I finished it, just like when I finished The Scarlet and the Black, I was kind of sad that I was done with it. So this book is When Books Went to War, the stories that helped us win World War II. And Molly Guptill Manning tends to write books about books, and that's why I would want to invite her to a book themed party. She's written things like this one, When Books Went to War. The other two that she's written were The War of Words, How America's GI Journalists Battled Censorship and Propaganda to Help Win World War II. I want to read that this year. And then the other one that she wrote was The Myth of Ephraim Tutt. And that's another book about a book, it's about a book about this author who wrote the Ephraim Tutt series. I guess Ephraim Tutt was a fictional lawyer. I believe that was. I actually haven't read any of the Ephraim Tutt books. He wrote a faux autobiography that it just created this whole uproar because at first people then thought that Ephraim Tutt was real and that upset them. And then they found out that no, he still was actually fictional. That upset people. So that all is in this book about the myth of Ephraim Tutt. So yeah, I would invite Molly Guptill Manning because she is someone who enjoys books so much that she writes books about books. So, yeah, she would be my choice to bring with me to a book-themed party. 8. VIP entrance. Which book did you feel privileged to read before it became widely popular, and why? I actually don't have an answer for this one because I don't believe I've actually ever been ahead of the curve in that way. I tend to read mostly history books, and I tend to read older literature. So either the thing that I've read has been out for a very long time, or it's kind of a niche interest that never really like catches a lot of steam. So yeah, I just don't think that I've ever read something before it blew up. So yeah, I don't really have a good answer for that one. 9. Dance battle. Which two characters from different books would you love to see face off in a dance battle? So I thought about this for a little bit, and I don't have books for both characters to show because I just didn't think of grabbing the other one. But the first character I thought about was Lando Calrissian from the, first of all, Star Wars movies, of course, but also from the Star Wars extended universe. No, not Legends. The extended universe. Don't get me started. But he's already dressed half the time like he's going to do disco anyway with that flowing cape he wears. So he would be perfect in a dance battle. He also is like I'm so suave and all that. So perfect for one side of it. The other person I would choose is actually from the first Timothy Zahn book that I read that was not written for Star Wars. This is his single novel, Angel Mass. And one of the main characters you follow in this, her name is Chandris. And it's not giving anything away to say that she is a bit of a con person. She knows how to work people to get what she needs / wants. And it's not giving anything away because that right when you meet her, you know this. And I just kind of think that based off of how I see her in the book, I could see her entering into a sort of dance battle if it is to her benefit. And I can see her also managing to absolutely distract Lando while he thinks that he's being suave enough to charm her. She would then make it off with whatever thing that they're doing a dance battle over because that's just the kind of operator she is. Yeah, if you haven't read Angel Mass, I recommend it. This one's a little heavier on the sci-fi than I feel like Night Train Rigel is, insofar as like it feels more technical than Night Train Rigel. But I love the characters in this one. They perhaps aren't as close to my heart in the same way as the ones from the Quadrail series, but I am very attached to Chandris and every other character in this. These are old friends, and I probably am due to reread this. Then 10, Midnight Read. What's a book you couldn't put down and ended up reading all night? Now, I used to do more of this than I do now, but I would say the last one I really can think of is the first Hunger Games. I read this all in one sitting. I read it before I watched the movie, although I'm not sure if it was before the movie came out. I want to say it was before the movie came out. I couldn't stop reading it. And I think I even might have had work the next day. Or the next... Not... I might have had work the next night. I read it all through the night, and then during the day when I was supposed to be sleeping, I read it in bed. Just because I couldn't stop reading. It was just... I couldn't put it down. So yeah, that's my midnight read. 11, After Party. What book left you with a hangover, unable to start a new read immediately upon reading it? This is a hard one for me because this is not an infrequent issue with me. I'm going to choose a book that I actually don't physically have here right now, and that is One Corpse Too Many by Ellis Peters. I'm pretty sure I've done let me try that again. I'm pretty sure I've done that thing which I have done for other books in the past, which is I finish reading it and then I go back and reread sections of it because I'm not ready to let those characters go. I still want to visit with them and to visualize what's going on with them. So it's very hard for me to move on when I have that sort of experience with a book. Sort of end up resenting that the book wasn't longer. So yeah, it's my choice, One Corpse Too Many by Ellis Peters. That's a Brother Cadfael book. The second one that he wrote, the first one was A Morbid Taste for Bones. Although I prefer, even though that one's good, I prefer One Corpse Too Many. Which is actually the first one that, the first episode, I believe, in the Cadfael TV series. They go ahead and start with One Corpse Too Many, as I recall. Okay, so 12, late night conversations. Which book left you thinking deeply or wanting to discuss it late into the night? This happens to me for a lot of books, which is why I started a booktube channel, because no one really wanted to hear me just go on and on and on about books forever. So that's part of why I have this channel. I'm going to go with Jane Austen because that's another specific reason why I started this, was because my mom has not read Austen's books. She's particularly resistant to it. Now, I have made a deal with her where I would read the second Anne of Green Gables book, which I just have not been able to get into, if she would read Jane Austen. I picked Mansfield Park for her after I read the beginning part where it describes Catherine, and she said, okay, I can that narration style. I don't mind that the narrator's involved. That's part of the writing style. So that's what I'm starting her out with. So I'm hoping then I will be able to have those conversations with her. But anyway, I'm choosing Mansfield Park partially because I've actually written a blog post on it in defense of Edmund Bertram and of I added on to that Edward Ferrars. But the thing I wrote was called Defense of Edmund Bertram. And with my discussing farther into this book, because there is a lot going on here. Fanny has enough people who talk about her defense, even though I am perfectly happy to defend the Fanny character. There's a lot going on, so many different characters, so much to talk about. I probably could go on about this for a while. And if I was to choose a secondary one, it probably would be Emma. Although I could probably discuss just about any of Jane Austen's book to some depth. Although I probably would want to read Mansfield Park a few more times before I could really go on about that one. Because that's one that I probably have read the least. Oh, and that's the last tag. Tag 13 is tagging people, so that will be in the description. Hope that you enjoyed this slightly disjointed video on the Nightclub book tag. I had fun picking these books. Now I have to have fun putting them all away again. Sorry, got a bit of a in my throat. So now I have to have fun putting them all away again. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me. If I have tagged you, hope that you will have fun picking the books for your books for this tag. And yeah, feel free to answer below if you do not have a booktube channel, what way you would answer some of these questions. Or, hey, start your own booktube channel and then make that your first video. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me. Hope that you have a very blessed day. See you. Bye.